What a ripper start it's been from the Aussies. They bounced back from a flat performance in the first test and they've cracked in hard for the first 2 days in Delhi. Great to see.
Well, how things can change in 90 minutes. Hello everyone and welcome to the last session on TNF TV for the review of the second test of the Border-Gavaskar trophy between Australia and India. My name's Flanagan. I'm joined by the great Michael Sheedy. Sheeds, it was a ripper start from the Aussies. 2 days of determined application and resolve over in Delhi, but what we saw on day 3, unfortunately, was anything but that.
It was. Let's start at the top.
Yeah.
It was a very good start.
Great start.
Win the toss. Captain Pat wins it again. Tails never fails. Happened to be correct again for him. We win the toss, we bat. Usman Khawaja, hats off to you. An unbelievable innings, I thought, on day 1.
Yeah, he was stunning in that first dig. He's just in beast mode at the moment. We spoke about in the preview show about limiting the expressions of individuality with the bat. For mine, that sentiment doesn't apply to Uzi. I think he's got a free pass. He's in such good nick at the moment. He's got such a good eye and his hands are so good at the moment. He can play however he likes. I know he's got out reversing a couple of times in this series, and we've spoken about that in the previous show about not being necessary, not what we necessarily want to see. But the flow he's in at the moment, I don't mind him playing that if the ball's there for it. He's the one exception, I feel. Everyone else should put it away, but I love the mindset Uzi's been in of late and the form he's been in. So Uzi, don't change a thing, brother. You're doing an unbelievable job.
One thing he did do, he had a simple game plan. He actually came down and used his feet quite well, I thought. And once he got through the seamers in Shami and they brought in Siraj, okay? And I thought Shami and Siraj bowled with genuine heat. I mean, they ruffled Warner a few times. Uzi, cool, calm and collected, as we've grown to love, I suppose. But the way in which he used his feet, and then he got the balls where he wanted them in order to sweep. And I think that's the big thing that is probably needs to be credit to him, was that he actually dictated where Ashwin and Jadeja bowled. And I thought he did that really, really well. Look, when you've got Marnus coming in at 3, and you'd expect him to do well as well. It was, even though Marnus only got 18, it was just time out there with Uzi. But then after that, it just sort of fell away really quickly until Pete Hanscom came in, and geez, he was good. He was compact, he was clear with his decisions. What'd you make of it?
Yeah, I love him. I love the Victorian captain. He showed the rest of the team how it's done. It was a masterclass in keeping things compact and getting out to the ball with the spinners. We spoke in the preview again about facing their spinners not being too expansive with the shot selection, just being disciplined to get the bat in front of the pad, play with the full face of the bat, give away your pad as you touched on. Pete did that all day and put us ahead of the game, and gave us a real chance to have a opportunity to win the test match. I thought it was a terrific example of patience and application and sticking to the task in the conditions that they were.
And I think, when Uzi got out, we were 5 for 160. So, I genuinely thought that if we could potentially get to 280, even though we've been 5 out all out in the first test, I did believe that with Hanscom being out there still, just the way he was going about it, his bat was out in front of his pad when needed to be. He used his feet quite well, which we've touched on. But then just, again, we just seem to, we're losing clumps, and it's really, really difficult. I think, the old saying, if 1 brings 2, in India, there is nothing more truer. Okay, 1 does bring 2 and sometimes can bring 3. But Captain Pat, to his, hats off to him.
Batted well in the first dig.
I thought his innings with Hanscom was outstanding. I mean, he did what I think it's been something like 8 to 10 tests where he hasn't got over 30. And, that's been a little bit of a worry for us. But I thought he batted really, really well. And, but again...
Lyon did as well. Lyon batted well too.
Lyon was good, but, and it was more about the time out there. And
handy late order runs.
Handy late order runs, which we've needed. So we scrapped 263. Hanscom left stranded, 72 not. He unlucky not to get 100, to be fair. He just needed someone else to anchor with him and he would have got one.
To elaborate further on the contribution that the lower order made there with Hanscom, when Carey got out, we were 6 for 168.
Yes.
You end up with 263, get nearly 100 runs
huge.
From those partnerships with Hanscom and the lower order. So that gave us a fighting chance of
being in the test.
Being in the contest, and then at the end of day 1, the Indian openers safely negotiated the last half hour. They were none for 22 at the close of play. And going into day 2, there's some doubts hanging over.
We opened with Kuhnemann. Did you expect that?
I didn't expect that, no. But
I would have gone Lyon in Delhi.
There were some doubts hanging over Lyon after his 50 overs for 1 wicket in Nagpur. But the mark of a champion is how they bounce back, and particularly in difficult conditions. And that 5 for 67 was absolutely brilliant. He was back to his brilliant best, easily the most threatening bowler in Delhi, and rolled through that Indian top order. 4 wickets in under 30 deliveries, knocked over KL Rahul, Rohit Sharma, Cheteshwar Pujara, and Shreyas Iyer, the 4th of which with his 100th wicket against India, which puts him 3rd all time on the list of most Test wickets against India. He's also now dismissed Cheteshwar Pujara 11 times in Test cricket. So terrific performance from Nathan Lyon, and we were right on top of the game.
Yeah, I think we predicted it in the preview that Nathan Lyon would bounce back. Absolutely the champion that he is. Interesting, some decisions made by India. They kept with KL Rahul at the top.
No Shubman Gill.
No Shubman Gill. And they also went for Shears Ira instead of Sky.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a big decision, given that Sky is absolutely rocking the world of cricket at the moment from a social media perspective. I mean, he is the duck's nuts when it comes to the up-and-coming Indian cricketers. But, interesting one. I love Shears Iyer as well. I think he's a quality player across all formats. But yet again, the late order runs, Flanas. We get into a position, and then all of a sudden, Jadeja 26, but Aksar and Ashwin, mate, they're batting like top order batters.
Yeah, they are. And the way that they were able to just bat a bit of time and soften up the ball, and then when the ball got old, the runs came a lot easier. It was terrific application to spend a bit of time out there and just sort of get a feel for it. And then, he and Ashwin just motored along beautifully. And we were in a position there, they were 7 for 139, still 124 behind. And if we had been able to roll through that last 3, it would have been in a dominant position right on top of the game. But gee, they showed a lot of resolve, as they both did in the first test. And it's a feisty lower order they've got, and they found a way to continue to just drag them out of a dire position. Just a little bit more online. He just looked really confident and invigorated, which seemed to be missing in Nagpur. He was right into the contest. You could see his mind was right up for the fight. He was getting huge revs on the ball, had great control. He had clever changes of his speed and his angles. The ball that he got Rohit Sharma with was an absolute cracker. Round the wicket to the right-hander, quicker ball, pitchy on a good length, middle of the leg. It gripped the pitch hard, shot through the gate of the Indian skipper. He couldn't believe it, Sharma. The Indian top order just looked really uncomfortable and fidgety against him, and Lyon made the most of it in the first session. Kohli, the only one who really looked cool and calm before lunch.
Yeah, Kohli, I mean, we expected him to bounce back as well, he did look good. I think that it's not easy, obviously, and we understand that from both teams' perspectives, that both teams have got their strengths and their weaknesses, and I think that India have just been able to highlight Australia's weaknesses greater than what Australia have theirs. But Nathan Lyon, the way he bounced back, and we did expect it, but I did say that Delhi wicket was going to suit him more, and it did. I was probably a little bit disappointed that Head didn't bowl a little bit more. I think you bring him in, he does have that knack of getting a wicket, and I just think that maybe they could have just swung it around a little bit. But I'm obviously not in the team rooms. I don't understand the plans in which they're building on the board, so that's fine. But from an outside punter's perspective, I did think that Head could have bowled a little bit more, because his contribution for me in the past has always been that lucky person. We saw it in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, he took 4 for not many in Sri Lanka. Yeah.
So, and I know the Sri Lankans are very different, but at home, I mean, they're still bloody good. So, for me, I just thought Australia. But 263 versus 262, I mean, happy days, game on, right? Australia are actually in the game where we can get in front of the test. And we spoke about at the start of the day, of the last session here, 90 minutes in cricket. Well, it was devastating, wasn't it? After we got away, let's touch on it. Head at the top, Warner's out, broken elbow.
Head awesome, and I spoke about Usman having a licence to reverse, and even though he's probably good enough to not even have to, he's seen that well. The 6 that he hit off Ashwin coming down the track and hitting him back over his head was incredible. Head as well. I think that those two at the top. I love Heady at the top and having the licence to attack their quicks, attack Siraj and attack Shami, because we haven't really had that sort of counter-punching option. Warner's been out of sorts, as we've touched on, and Labuschagne and Smith play in a little bit of a different style to Heady. Heady's
cautious.
Yeah, exactly. So I like Usman and Heady at the top, and both having the licence to play their way. But for mine, they're the only ones who should have that full licence for freedom to play their way.
Yeah, I think you probably throw Smith into there. I think Smith's proved himself over time, no matter where he is in the world. But I do understand what you're saying there. I suppose Shami, for me, Head obviously loves the pace coming onto the ball, and the newer ball, the harder ball, it suits him. Okay, so even with Ashwin bowling with the harder ball, and then Jadeja, he batted really, really well. On that second night, it was so. But going into day 3.
It was delicately poised, and
it
it was a
was.
series-shaping day
Yep.
coming up, and there's so much on the line. The Test Championship.
Head comes out, hits
final.
first ball for 4.
Yep.
Everyone thinks, well, I was listening to Haydos on the radio, and he was like, wow, how good is this? Impressive start. Then he gets out straight away, and I was like, oh no, Ashwin just gets him, and I was thinking, what is going to happen here? This could just be a train wreck. And I'm not far wrong, apart from Labuschagne, it was.
And the frustrating thing is it seemed like there were still runs out there. We thought the night before, saw how comfortable Ashwin and Akshar were when the ball was soft. And then again, heading against the new ball, cruising to 39 off 38 just before stumps. That surface was always going to be really tough to battle in the fourth innings. If you felt that Aussie just could have knuckled down in that first session of day 3 and batted time long enough to soften up the ball, the runs would eventually been easier to score, and Australia would have been really hard to stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, then it all just fell apart.
It did, and I just heard Andrew McDonald talk in his presser, and he makes it very clear that they've got to own it, okay, and that he thought they'd got themselves into the game, which they had. Obviously, they were up by 60 overnight, so absolutely they were in the game, but then after that just capitulated, like we touched on. The nature of Jadeja, and you and I watched his presser after the game. The commentator said, do you sweep Jadeja? And he laughingly said, no, not on this surface. And I mean, he's absolutely down to the ground, 100% right, isn't he? It's just so difficult.
We'll throw to that now.
Ball is keeping low, so I was just look to bowl into the stumps. I knew that they're going to play sweeps and reverse sweeps, so yes, my aim was, just keep bowling into the stumps. My plan was, try and just keep bowling into the stump. If they make misstep, then I have a chance to get them out.
Sweep shot is a good option against Ravindra Jadeja?
Not on this kind of wicket.
It is just so difficult to face Jadeja in those conditions. It's not necessarily the side spin he's getting. It's the fact that he's firing it in nice and tight, like he said, going stump to stump. I mean, it is a pretty safe play in India, and also it didn't allow Australia to give their stumps away. So the moment he didn't go off the tram tracks at all, and he didn't expect to turn it. He just wanted to go as fast as he could and at their pegs. But his variation in tempos I thought was outstanding. His variation in flight, world class. And again, he gets 7 for 42.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, he's a superstar. He's a world-class superstar, and particularly in those conditions, he's one of the best we've ever seen. So, it worried me the temperament that we operated in and the shot selection that we operated within that second innings with 2 such high-class bowlers in their home conditions, Ashwin and Jadeja, on form, putting it where they want to put it. I don't want to slay the players.
No.
Because it was a bloody good effort for those first 2 days. We fought really hard with the bat and ball. We played well enough to put ourselves in a position where we're ahead of the game heading into day 3, which against India, in India, is a very impressive feat, and it showed how combative a unit we can be.
Yep.
The way we capitulated, however, with the shot selection in the second innings, that was anything but combative. And with the series, the Border-Gavaskar Trophy, and the Test Championship final on the line, to see them implode like that, as an Aussie cricket fan and an Aussie cricket lover, it was horrific to watch. But I don't want to focus on the mode of dismissals and as much as I want to focus on why they happened. The old saying, proper preparation prevents piss poor performance, has never been more relevant, I feel, than in the aftermath of this match. There's many excuses that can be made for that performance, but I don't think any of them are acceptable. We should never allow our players to be so underprepared for such a big series that they dish up that sort of performance. And I feel sorry for our players. I feel sorry for Pat Cummins for what he's copied at the moment, because we did not give them adequate preparation to go and perform in a series like that.
Yep.
Matthew Hayden credits his success sweeping in India in 2001 to having attended a spin camp in 1999 under the supervision of Bishan Bedi and Erapali Prasanna in Chennai, and then another camp a year later set up by Ross Harris, the then curator at the Allen Border Field in Brisbane, to create a slow turner for him to practice ahead of the India tour in 2001. Hayden spent 6 months hitting sweep shots on a ruggedly prepared practice wicket in Brisbane to emulate the conditions of the subcontinent. He would replicate a full day's play by having spinners bowl him for 2 hours from 10:30 to 12:30, stop for a 40-minute lunch break, and then go again for another 2-hour session. That is the preparation required for the difficulty of the tour that we're sending our players on. So now they're copying it all around from all media. Everyone's smashing our players for the way they went about it. I'm looking higher up at how we prepared them for this tour. I think that was probably the poorest thing.
Yeah, and absolutely. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, and we can say that. I'm sure that there was discussions around the preparation and how they were going to manage it. We've come out of Big Bash, to which they all wanted to be involved in after a test series here at home, against a couple of easy beats that proved to be. it wasn't a great preparation going to India. Okay, I also do believe that 5 of the top 7 hadn't batted in India in a Test match. Obviously, apart from Smith and Hanscom. Okay, so when you've got Khawaja, Head, Labuschagne, Renshaw, maybe. I might be wrong there, but definitely Alex Carey hadn't. I mean, you can't have 5 of your top 7 going into a Test series with such limited prep in regards to those conditions. I understand they've all played white ball cricket over there. That's fine. It's a whole different game though. So I think even just going to Dubai and having at the ICC and having the wickets set up, which you can do. They've got the red dirt, okay, and they can match any wicket in the world there. So all we needed to do, in my perspective, was to go there earlier and prepare on some raging dust bowls with some left arm orthodoxes that are doppelgangers of Jadeja.
Well,
it's possible.
If you look at the preparation, there's no practice matches in India. There's no practice matches in any subcontinental type conditions. No practice camp in Australia. No Australia A fixtures. No Sheffield Shield in the lead up to the tour. If we believe that the Indian curators would prepare a green seamer for us as a practice wicket, send them to Dubai or Sri Lanka or Bangladesh, as you just touched on, get required practice in those sort of conditions.
Yep.
Or failing that, prepare some wickets in the top end. Why in Australia versus Australia A 4-day fixture in Darwin or North Queensland didn't take place prior to this series bemuses me a little bit. Or failing that, at the very least, we could schedule the Big Bash at the start of the summer when we have an India tour coming up, finish the BBL in the first week of January, so we can have a couple of Shield games before we go to India. So I'm looking squarely at the scheduling and the lack of any preparation camps or fixtures to prepare our players for the conditions and the sheer rigorousness of this tour, the toughest tour there is.
Yeah, it is the toughest tour there is. And for those viewers out there who have never been to India or have never experienced it in India, it is something very, very different. And, how we respond to this is obviously the big thing. How we respond to only getting 113 on the board in the 3rd innings of the match was obviously, we were never going to bowl them out for the lead that we had, okay? And to be honest, I thought our lads stuck at it pretty well with the ball. I thought Nath, Lyon and Murphy bowled particularly well. Murphy looked a little bit tired, but yet again, he gets Virat in his pocket, which is a big thing for a young kid in only his 2nd Test match. He's got him a couple of times already now. But just the nature of the way Shearer came out, bang, down the wicket, 6 runs. Pujara never looked flustered. He was lucky a couple of times. Short leg, Pete Hanscom was in the game a couple of times off both Lyon and Murphy, but was never going to be in real trouble in order for them to lose the match. And then Bharat, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He actually got a little bit of confidence, I thought, at the end.
Yeah.
The young wicketkeeper batsman who's obviously in for the much talked about Rishabh Pant. And whether or not they make a change now, they probably don't need to. They'll just keep Pant on the sidelines, and KL Rahul doesn't have to take the gloves. But it was a disappointing loss.
Yeah, and it was frustrating that we let Pujara and Bharat get away because we'd had them under the cosh and they hadn't really got away at any point during the tour so far. So to let those guys get away and finally get a start and both unbeaten as well at the end was a little bit frustrating. But yeah, we were never going to be able to defend the total we put up after getting bowled out for 113. More things to think about.
Go.
I think I'm disappointed at the selectors for failing to recognise Travis Head as a lock in our team for the first Test. Smith and Marnus and Head are our best bats, have been for a long time. I'm also a little bit frustrated at the selectors that I don't think they did their due diligence selecting this squad. Firstly, selecting injured players and not naming an extended squad, which we spoke about in the preview show. And secondly, failing to recognise players with experience in the conditions and a strong enough temperament to have an impact on this series while selecting others that are seemingly less fortified characters and therefore less suitable for this particular challenge. I'll give you some names. Cam Bancroft, Marcus Harris, Daniel Hughes, Josh Inglis, Glenn Maxwell, Ashton Turner, Moses Enriques, Curtis Patterson, Michael Nessa, Sean Abbott, Aaron Hardy, Nathan McAndrew, Marcus Stoinis, Matt Short, Wes Agar, Mark Steckity, Henry Thornton, Spencer Johnson, Adam Zampa, Chris Green, John Holland. All those guys I think could potentially have been considered to be taken over as an A squad. The younger players gaining experience in the conditions, older players providing flexibility for team selection. I think we really missed a trick not sending an extended squad to provide that additional playing depth and also some moral support. The remainder of the playing group, I think that was a huge error. Yeah,
absolutely, and I think we touched on it in the preview for the last session, and definitely after in the first Test match at Nagpur, where they weren't over there. For me, it's about Hazelwood comes home now, obviously not fit. Cummins unfortunately comes home due to an illness in the family, so that we lose our skipper. but then also Warner potentially comes home, or maybe he's already on the flight home with a broken elbow. And then there's another one I'm missing.
Who else going home?
Morris potentially to come back and play Shield cricket. So, it seems to be, wow, who's left standing over there? And what happens now going forward? They've got 12 days off now. So, and in India, you are stuck in a hotel, mate. Like, they cannot go anywhere. It's not like Melbourne or Sydney where they can just go down to Bondi or, go to Albert Park Beach. I mean, there is nowhere they can go without being, mobbed by 100,000 fans. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And I can't imagine those walls in those hotels are going to be creeping in very, very closely. So the mental well-being of this group is going to be crucial, how they deal with it in the next 10 days.
And I know in regard to taking an extended squad or doing extra preparation for the tour, the Sheffield Shield season's now on, and removing all those players that I mentioned before, that'd have a significant and unwanted impact on the Sheffield Shield. I'm certainly in agreement with that.
Yep.
But so maybe we just have to be more thorough and flexible with the year-to-year scheduling of the domestic competitions to greater complement whatever upcoming international fixtures are coming. The final of India's first-class four-day competition, the Ranji Trophy, concluded on the same day the second test finished. So India have had a whole season of first-class cricket behind them before this series to assess the form of all their players in the four-day format.
Yep.
2 weeks ago, the Vics played their first Sheffield Shield match for 70 days. Our entire pool of players to select from on this tour have been limited to solely playing Big Bash in the lead up to this extremely difficult tour. I feel for how our players will be feeling at the moment. I think it's time we have a really good hard look at our due diligence in regard to preparing the schedules properly to give ourselves the chance to succeed on tough away tours.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give you a really good example of what's happening at the moment. Matt Parkinson, the Lancashire leg spinner, he's actually gone to Zimbabwe to play a 4-day game or a couple of 4-day fixtures over there with the red ball. And the reason being is because he can't play in England at the moment. It's winter, okay? So, and he's not on their tour to New Zealand. So he's chosen to go over there. He can't play first class cricket here in Australia because of our rules. So he's gone over there into Zimbabwe of all places, and highlighted the fact that he needs to bowl and he needs to improve. Kudos to him. I reckon that's brilliant. And, I get your passion for it. I understand it. The white ball lead up to this tour is not great, okay? And this tour didn't sneak up on us, by the way. We knew that this tour was happening, and we spoke about it all summer, but yet we never played on a Bunsen burner. And, I think we did miss a trick there. I don't know how they do it going forward, but then obviously there will be a lot of talks around CA, and I think the players will be giving the most feedback. They'll understand that they potentially not have been ready for this tour so far, but they do have 2 tests to go. It is up to the batters. Okay, the batters need to go out there and show some resolve and get some runs, and they will.
And I think it's up to the mindset of those batters. I'm looking a little bit suspiciously at some of the messaging coming from within the group, the notion that there's going to be a ball with your name on it. I agree in principle, but some of these balls are difficult to face. But I think it's a defeatist attitude to keep coming out and saying that in the media. There's no way we can combat Jadeja and Ashwin. You can never accept that one of these balls is going to get me out. I don't think it's an appropriate mindset for us to take into batting against anyone at any level of cricket. I think, how am I planning to deal with these balls to stay out here for a long time and make runs for my team is the way to think. Not, Ravi's got my name on this one, I better slog and get a quick 10 before he gets me out.
Yep.
I'm not having that as an appropriate mindset, and I don't want to hear that phrase again.
I loved Ronnie's Andrew McDonald's presser this morning when he said it was perceived pressure that Ashwin and Jadeja have, out there, and they exude that. And yeah, absolutely, 40,000 fans, absolutely hammering home, their amazing talent. But the perceived pressure is what Andrew McDonald's brought up. So clearly there is that talk track, and they need to get around it. How to flip that on its head? You don't want to go listening to Alan Border and all these old critics, because at the end of the day, they're just dial-a-headline type people. But at the end of the day, they do have some merit in what's being said, and that is we have to play a little bit harder, hard-nosed, and we do have to have the ability to say, right, I am not going to get out to this, and my game plan is good enough, and I'm good enough.
It's been a very intriguing series so far, and there's plenty more to come. There's 2 tests to go in Indore and Ahmedabad. That's all the time we've got for here on The Last Session. Stay tuned on the TNF socials for more coverage of the Border-Gavaskar Trophy. Also, plenty happening in other parts of the world, so tune in for our coverage of the T20 Women's World Cup and the England versus New Zealand Test Series. I'm Tommy Flanagan. He's Michael Sheedy. This has been The Last Session. We'll see you next time on Tales Never Fails TV.